Now, the classic bike scene, what does it mean to you? Old bikes and equally old buffers, or perhaps it just means sea of chrome? Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of interest in the classic bike scene, so if you're interested in bikes, stay with us, because we're at the Stafford Classic Bike Show, and there's some wondrous bikes here. Well, welcome to a time warp showroom. What do I mean by that? Well, all these bikes are laid out as though it was a showroom, but these take you back 40 years, or they take me back 40 years. See this one, a BSA Row Rocket, says it on the tank, nice big transfer there. Actually had one of these in the mid-60s. Seem to remember it cost me about 120, well it was 120 quid. This one, 3,900 quid, so that's appreciated a fair bit. But I'll tell you what, sitting on it now, it feels a little bit strange. I think I'll have to get a road test on one of these, just to take me back to those heady days of the 60s. But they've got other bikes down here as well. Something I fancied which never had, BSA Gold Star. Look at this, to me it still looks really racy. If I just nip in front of the camera, you've got this big 5-gallon tank, beautiful piece of aluminium craftwork there, single cylinder 350 overhead valve engine, very simple. Drum brake, it doesn't look much, but in fact these were very, very effective. Gold Stars were quite a bike of their time. Then you can come along here, little Tiger Cub. If you're a learner, you used to have one of these, little 200cc single cylinder bike. And I always remember that exhaust system really gave a sort of machine gun-like rapport. It was ba 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 ba. Used to disturb the neighbours. Little like that. Come to a nice Triumph, Tiger 100 by the looks of it. Siamese pipes. This was very popular at one time. They used to bring two pipes into one. See that little join there? Siamese pipes they used to call it. You've got a Thunderbird here. Very nice in this metallic grey. Again, those Siamese pipes, and that one's got this rear part on it they used to call the bathtub, if you can see it, because it looks like an inverted bathtub at the back there, all covered in. And this massive front guard, not very fashionable these days, but used to keep your feet dry, as you can see. And then, of course, you've got the Bonneville. And with the Bonneville, still there's a new one out, but there's still a lot of demand for the old one, so much so that they haven't even priced this one. They've got two of them here, no prices. The old Thunderbird, 1960, 3,950. Looks a pretty fair price for that. No price on the Bonnie, you're probably talking of 6 grand or something like that. What have they got here? Nice 500 Triumph with an all-alloy engine. If you look here, very closely finned there. All aluminium, no iron on that one. Nice looking engine. And it's also got a sprung hub at the back. Bonneville there, famous blue and white, but blue and silver colour scheme. Looks really neat. Again, serious offers only. And so it goes. And then down the other side, you can see they've got Nortons. Again, bikes of their time. But it's quite funny, all these are in pretty good condition, and say it really is a time warp showroom. Now, perhaps you're into classic bikes or not into classic bikes, but you like the new Bonneville. Well, here's a new Bonneville. So what's it doing at a classic show? Well, this is probably to appeal to the traditional classic bike rider. But nevertheless, this company have done a few mods on this one. It's got brand new stainless steel header pipes there, new silencers, slimmer ones, and not too noisy, but an extra Triumph sound to them, a bit of an edge. Got new carburetors on it, smooth bore carbs. Overall, it gives an overall better performance. Got a new air cleaner box in there as well. Altogether, another 10 brake horsepower, which isn't bad. And so I'm told you get that unique Bonneville sound. Now, if you're into sewing machines as well as bikes, you'll probably recognise this, Singer. Yes, the very same famous name. But this is their first motorbike, or moped as it were. 1900 this came out. And look at this back wheel. I don't know about you, but this looks incredibly modern to me, these aluminium spokes. But in there's a little cast iron engine, 200cc. That sat vertical in there, drove through rollers, and you went speeding along. Quite a novel blooming machine. But I must read this little bit to you. Lovely turn of phrase. Remember, this is 1900s, this is. And their catalogue claimed, there's a marked absence of complications, no batteries to trouble the driver, a magneto being used, a system which entirely overcomes the danger of fire as the ignition ceases when the motor stops. So you feel better for that, wouldn't you? But I'll tell you an interesting thing at the back to show times don't change. It's got a tiny registration plate here. I wonder if anyone ever got nicked. Suzuki, you'll certainly recognise the name, but whether you'll recognise this bike or not, I don't know. See that there, RE5. This is a rotary engine bike, so no pistons, no cylinders in this one. It's just got a central rotor, triangular rotor, made about 496cc, 500cc. do 110 miles an hour, but they had problems with this in sealing that rotor within the engine. So it's basically the Wankel engine, the German designed engine, but it wasn't too successful in this one. But nice restoration on this, goes back to 1976, and in fact it was restored by prisoners as a project in Full Sutton Prison. Done a nice job though, isn't it? Great for a great escape. Police bikes, eh? Send a shiver up your spine, especially if you've been a naughty lad. Perhaps not with this one, because this is the one that Nick Berry uses in Heartbeat. There's nothing to frighten you with this. 250cc Francis Barnett 2-stroke. Not an actual police bike, but a replica. But over here is a real police bike. This one's from 1960. It's the old BSA Gold Flash, 650cc engine, do about 100 mile an hour, 110 if you're very, very lucky. So quite state of the art of that time. And just look at this. Talk about communications. This massive speaker here, the old fat controller used to be at the other end and shout at you, go to Mrs. Jones down the road or whatever it happened to be. And look at this, when you wanted to communicate back, you had to lift the old handset because there was no helmet in those days. You just had a flat cap, speak away, yes, I'm here, PC plug. And that was it, quite sort of novel, quite amusing. Then you click that back on. Coming back here, you can see the radio equipment there. And of course, you've got the police sign at the back so they could put the old light on and stop you dead. And when the family car could only do about 70, this was pretty cool kit. Now Gilera, there's an Italian name for you. Probably more used to seeing it on scooters than on motorbikes, but they are coming back into bike production. But this one goes way back, in fact to 1957. Raced by the famous Jeff Duke and the likes of Bob McIntyre. 500cc, double overhead cam. Just look at those cams stuck well up on there. Lovely slim little engine, all magnesium casting. Beautiful job there. Massive twin leading shoe front brake. Just imagine lapping the Isle of Man TT on this thing and top speed of what, 150 miles an hour. Looks very, very puny. The same with the frame, very thin tubes here. Swinging arm rear suspension, but beautifully restored. This one's down at the Sammy Miller Museum. Yes, you counted right. 6 exhaust pipes, 6 cylinders, because this is Honda's CBX. 6-cylinder, 1000cc, 1978. This one's absolutely immaculate. But I'll tell you what, if you want to see how things have changed with bikes, this was a super bike of its time. Just look at these front forks. Those front fork stanchions look so skinny. In fact, they're no bigger than the exhaust pipes themselves. Do you like this one? This is an AA service vehicle, or rather a prototype from 1947. What is it? It's in fact a trike, because behind it is hiding the motorbike, or the rear end of one. Tiny little dot 2-stroke. But they might not have flogged it to the AA, but they did in fact sell them to ice cream vendors and all those sort of people. Long time ago, but it looks quite quaint now, doesn't it? No, this is not an early edition of Harley's Fat Boy with that full disc wheel. This, in fact, is a 1940s Triumph. Yes, you heard right. I've never ever seen this bike before. 350cc twin, and these full disc wheels, as I said, just like the Fat Boy. Full disc wheels, front and rear, big valance guards, fully enclosed at the back here. And their idea was to make a sort of fully enclosed, civilized gentleman's motorcycle. Something like Yamaha's new T-Max and all the big scooters. So Triumph were there back in 1940, and even I didn't know that. Now Triumph, of course, a famous name, but there are some rarities. There's this one. Now don't get confused with the BSA Triumph Bandits and Furies of that ilk. This one's completely different. The famous Edward Turner, who devised the first Triumph, the Speed Twin, in 1939, he designed this one just before he left in the 60s. And this is a gear-driven, overhead cam, 350cc bike. Looks very similar to those later prototypes you might have seen, but this is unique, only one, and only runs up very rarely. Something else that's very rare on it as well, it's got a disc brake, and remember this was in the mid-60s, but this one's cable operated. See that? This just runs on a little cam and pushes the pads onto the disc that way. Don't know how effective it is, but it was a first. Now Royal Enfield, famous name, is it not? And you've probably seen all the adverts for Enfield, but these are the ones from India, but not this one. This is an original made in Redditch in the UK, 1961, 500cc, absolutely immaculate. And this example, if the owner wanted to sell it, would probably cost you about £4,500. But you can buy a brand new one. Come with me and I'll show you. So here we are in 2001. Here is a brand new Enfield, and this one will cost you 2,800 quid for a 500cc bike. And it's virtually identical to that predecessor that I showed you. Engine slightly different because that was what they called the big head model, all alloy. This one's got an iron barrel. But essentially, it's the same bike, just been brought up to date with indicators, better carburetor, quieter silencer. But there it is, the same bike, 40 years on. Now, if you fancy getting yourself a classic bike, you could start with one like this, 2,600, and it's a goer, it's ready to go. Or you could start on a project. Just look at these here. This is an old aerial here. Makes you wonder where it's been, doesn't it? It's rusty as hell, but it's all intact. Could say all original. I'm sure the manufacturer wouldn't like to say all original. And then look at this over here, an old matchless Silver Arrow. Never seen one of these before, little 400cc thing. Terrible state, but you've really got to know what you're looking for, and you've got to make sure that you're prepared for a long search for bits and pieces. But there's plenty of bits and pieces here. Now all this just might look like a load of old rusty rubbish, but it's not. If you happen to want a brake drum for a 1926 something, here it is, and you've been looking for years, remember. Same with other brake hubs here, and you come along here, you want a little chain case cover or primary timing side cover for BSA, I recognise there. There's a Norton. All sorts of alloy components and bits and pieces. There's shock absorbers down there, swinging arms there. What you've got to realise, if you're stuck for a part and it's stopping your restoration project, you'll buy anything here. Bit of shot blasting, bit of stove enamelling, good as new.